And Lindsey Graham coming out, for every American hostage that Hamas does something to, we need to take down one Iranian oil refinery. Like, it is so clear that they're going after the oil exports to China to disrupt China's economy so they cannot continue with the gold-backed currency for the Brics-aligned nations. This is far wider than two little countries in the Middle East fighting. That's where they want your eyes. They want your eyes over there. But you should be looking over here, because the disruption is like the Jenga game. Pull out the piece, but they need one single piece to pull out. The ones that need the most oil voraciously every single day, who's on top? China. See, if you disrupt the flows of oil to China, you absolutely cascade them from the inside out. And that derails the de-dollarization. If that Brics doesn't move forward, they're just going to go back to using the dollar again, because it's the most stable thing. And people will get taught a lesson, even though you had this giant conglomeration of nations to fight the Death Star, it didn't work. And welcome back. Thank you for joining me through this intense week that we've seen. What I wanted to talk about today was a little bit different, but still incorporates some of the same messaging that we're seeing across the media in this all-out blitz, shock and awe for your mind. This thing is being taken 6 ways from Sunday for everybody on the planet, much like COVID was. But this now has a religious aspect to it, which brings people into the fear of the apocalypse, the fear of the end days, fear of the global war. And you can see it in real time coming out so fast, it's difficult to keep up with. Now, what I've noticed through the research in the last, since Saturday when I saw this thing kick off, I'm only looking at the news now approximately every 12 hours. I want to stay out of the loop. I just want to see the big jumps from morning to evening, evening to morning. So what I've noticed is this is purposefully being inflated in terms of breadth and depth and scope to eventually include Iran on purpose. Because if you can take out the Iranian oil supply to China, along with other periphery nations there, you could stop the de-dollarization and the march forward in the Brics nations that will continue to de-dollarize and self-settle between themselves with either gold or the commodities that they hold within their nations, uranium, copper, wheat, whatever it is, outside the dollar. If you were going to be a bevy of nations, the Western powers, for a better term, you're going to have to try to pull out one linchpin. You can't try to pull everything out at the same time. You're going to have to focus on a plan to take down one of the countries in the Brics that will have the most damage for the entire plan moving forward for that Brics-aligned set of nations. So I want to run through with you right now and explain it from the way I'm seeing it, because I used to live in China. I worked there. I see how they had problems even when I was there. But these problems have grown in terms of economic inequality, the extreme amounts of men versus women, the non-job opportunities after graduation, even if you have a PhD. It's just run its course so much faster than our 250 years of running the course of the United States and then subsequent the fiat dollar in the last 100 years. What it took the United States to do in 100 years, China accomplished in 30. So it went up and down much faster. It was literally a flash. Well, ours has been 120 years plus, and then it's coming back down. So this really sums it up here. These celestial cycles match up with the economic and geopolitical cycles that we're witnessing right now. If you've seen any of the previous, the Tree of Life, solar alignments, it's all right on cue that the elite and power brokers are using the sun and its timeline for these same sets of goals to be met from their end, at least in their eyes. Barron's warns the stock market looks like the dot-com boom before the bust. The Magnificent Seven, all tech stocks accounted for more than 25% of 2023's gains. Meanwhile, Fortune warns the S&P is heading below 3,000.
Two of the biggest stock market crashes happened in October, October 1929 and Black Monday 1987. Seasonally, we're entering the best 6-month period for gold and silver. Along with the Fed nearing the end of their rate hikes, gold is poised to skyrocket. JP Morgan and Wells Fargo both forecast gold to hit an all-time high in 12 to 18 months. Call the Patriot Gold Group today before it's too late. When you call them, mention the Adapt 2030 channel. They're going to give you some great in-class service. Patriot Gold Group has the no fee for life IRA, where your IRA or 401k can be in physical gold or silver. And the no fee for life IRA is on qualifying rollovers. Give them a call. 888-546-7020. And also now, for the 7th year in a row, Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs top-rated IRA gold dealer. 888-546-7020. And now on with the video.
So I hope you appreciate the image. This is what Ransom Godwin and myself put together, trying to put the context on today of gold in celestial cycles on economy and geopolitics. And those trying to harvest these energies, and harvest they are. The fear, they are harvesting that from you. You are a battery source at this point if you're buying the fear. Now, don't get me wrong. There's no time to just sit around and be like, oh, I'm not going to do anything. But the broadcast moves are everywhere. It is so clean to see where this is going to move to next. They've already set in motion a series, at least 10 moves deep, that you can see where it's going to. I'm going to try to explain a few of them today. First of all, insider paper. The Biden administration, you're going to hear this announcement on Monday in our Congress/House of Representatives news feed. They're going to start telling you that this here is going to be a prolonged, tangible, and political long war. What's this mounting of incursion? Don't know when it's going to happen, but they're going to go in sometime. They're generally probably going to come into the north up there in Gaza. Once that kicks off, you as an American citizen, or all of us, are then going to be told it will be a protracted, long engagement. To get ready for it, show your patriotism for nations that are not our nation. That's what you'll be told. Long game. They're getting you ready for the long game. But really what it boils down to is the collapse of fiat currencies across time, which we sit at again. Our US dollar has rolled over to the point where they put $300 billion on the deficit in a single one day. One day. You know, we're clipping along. It wasn't $1 trillion a month. Now that's moving into the $1 trillion every 2 weeks kind of thing. That was from 33 trillion last month. So that we're way past the point of ever being able to pass and pay off that debt. So how do you get out of that? Well, every time we've been taken to war. Now, if you look at the progression and the declines of the Netherlands, Great Britain pound, or Britain, you know, when it was the superpower of the world, the British Navy, etc., into our own dollar now, there's almost zero value left in it. And we are at the collapse phase of the debt system as we know it. If you haven't seen it since COVID, there's not been too much like debt issue to grow businesses and then need for those new funds. And we're starting to see it more commonly than not, de-dollarization in whatever nation it is. Devaluing is a better term. So if we go to dinner in Argentina, this is what we'll have to pay for the bill at the end. When the exchange rate used to be 2 Argentinian pesos for 1 American dollar. Now look at that. It's scary to even look at and think about. But, you know, we've run the course. Everybody understands this. The world, governments understand it, economists understand it, central banks get it. We're at the end. There's really nothing else to spur any economy on the planet except for war. And I think everybody, even though they look like they're enemies against each other, are all colluding together because they need to reset the system. We've seen it again and again. They want to reset the entire global system to a central bank digital currency. China's in on that. They love it. Russia, they've been working on it. So it's not an adversarial thing like, oh, they're not going to do CBDCs after we collapse economies and we're going to move to CBDCs. No, the entire planet is marching lockstep. Now, how much of it is a grandiose stage play for us and how much of it's real? You know, the religious aspects of that hate since the days of the Canaanites, thousands of years, is real. But in terms of an adversary sitting across an ocean pointing fingers, and the entire world has to be reset for it to work. So it's going to require a world event to do it. Because look at this, the monthly cost of a new mortgage is now 42% of US median income. That means if you're going to buy a house, that's going to cost you nearly a lion's share of your wages. That's impossible for anybody to have any extra spending money just to stay in their house. And look, I got these insurance payments. I got they raised my property taxes. Now I'm getting stuck on I'm being strong-armed into paying exorbitant raises in prices on my property tax and my homeowner's insurance just to stay in my own house. That's past that. I'm getting stung to stay here. It's ridiculous. And that's 10% of what it was in 2008. Then we got the banks crashing, and it continued. So if you didn't notice, here just last week, some of the bigs, Bank of America, Citigroup, had reached their 52-week lows as people continue to pull their money out and put it in money market funds, buy gold and silver, or turn it into something tangible before we get into an incredibly inflationary cycle here. So when you start to see charts like this and things are matching up, and then suddenly China is trying to drain the gold out of the world over to their basket, which will be shared by the Brics Alliance nations. So as I did one program before, this is the newest updated one from 2 days ago, or yeah, October 9th, so 3 days ago. I thought the price was going to increase to $150 as I was told, but it actually backed off and then came back to 110. Now what that means is in Shanghai, they're now paying you $110 approximately more per ounce of gold than you can get anywhere else in the world. It was 120 when I did the program talking about this slide, but I've gotten the newest updated information. So the draw is pulling everything over into China. Now, again, if you're going to go after a nation, you first need to demonize it. Now, we really can't demonize China too bad, excuse me, because they're such trading partners with it and they hold so many treasury bonds, you can't really do too much. But now look at the call. We suddenly flipped on a dime. Mossad is now blaming Huawei because Huawei allowed the axis of evil to access smartphones with no Western backdoor. Now that should tell you something also, that every phone has a way for them to get into it and look at your communications. Now they're saying, well, Huawei made these phones that we couldn't break into, and it's their fault because they could communicate secretly, and they did all this behind our backs, and we didn't know. They're the ones, it's their fault. Axis of evil, Russia, China, Iran. You can almost see them seething when they say that. So now, the new thing is buy 1 gram of gold. Buy a gram of gold. It's a new way to invest. Stock market's collapsing anywhere in China, across Asia. Buy grams of gold. Save your money in Gold Shot. That's the messaging currently. This is off Taiwan News. And they issue you a nice little clear, cute piggy bank like this that you can put your gold in. That's Gold Shot. And each one of those little, they call them beans, like gold beans, dodo. Each one of those is 1 gram approximately, and it's about $100 or so, which is a little more than if you were going to buy a full ounce at, let's say, $1,800 to get 28 of those little dodo or beans, if you want to call them gold beans. You're going to pay a little more on the premiums per ounce by getting the Gold Shot, but in reality, it should be exactly the same price as an ounce of gold if you go through any of the exchanges and take a look at it. So they're trying to encourage young people. Put your money in here. You don't have enough to get into stocks. Stocks are too expensive. You can't even get like TSMC. You're not going to be able to even get one TSMC stock. You can get 4 grams of gold or 5 grams of gold for that same price of one stock. Or you can just at that time get 1 gram of gold and just fractionalize it like you would think with cryptocurrencies. So now it comes down to nations are going to demand physical delivery of their golds. Our citizens demand delivery of the gold. You see how this is being done. Now currently COMEX settles cash only. So if you can come up and make a country physically deliver to you because your citizens are demanding it, then well, that changes a whole bunch of rules. Nobody's going to cash settle anymore. My citizens demand the physical delivery. So now that's another talking point. They're trying to steal all the gold. They're trying to, like, it's a double prong now, and now it's going to be a three prong. Oh, they're using slave labor. Oh, they're doing this. Oh, they're undercutting the market. Oh, they're dumping this product. They're dumping. Like, China's going to be the whipping post here in about a fifth of an eighth of a second, because the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, now if you take a look at our member federation states here, People's Republic of China, that is the one that is going to control the gold along with Russia. And all the other member states that are inside there are heavy hitters also, and they have different natural resources. So India, the original Brics members, obviously Brazil, India, China, South Africa. But you notice where the transit corridors are moving through, none of the Western aligned nations are in these new transit corridors, which means as our economies collapse further, there's going to be no way really to recover. The debt cycle's there, not there. The movement of money is not going to be valued. People aren't going to want the debt. They're already, selling off treasuries, and it's just we've run to the end of it. And the Western powers know there's nowhere to go from here except for themselves to be overthrown in their own nations, of what we have seen across history that hasn't occurred at our own nation yet. So these corridors originally were about Ukraine and getting control of the pipelines. Ukraine had a lot more going on than just Russia coming in. It was all about control of these pipelines as well, and the uranium and the natural resources. Because if you could control one of the corridors coming through and out of the Brics nations that was Western aligned controlled, then at least you had a little leverage. But now the Ukraine has evaporated somewhat. You really don't see it on the news anymore. It's just kind of an afterthought. Everything is directed down there. How quick that switch was to move the chess piece. But that was really what Ukraine about. All these pipelines and regional pipelines coming out. Like, where can you grab as a Western power control over one of those so you have some leverage over energy and the ability for energy to move, that you could say, no, you need to pay us. Oh, no, we can put a sanction on it. We can control it. There's really none for Western powers to use anymore, except within their own little regional blocks, like in Canada, United States, and Mexico. Are we going to sanction Canada? I don't think so. Is Canada going to sanction America? I don't think so. But this is what the power play was, is to grab transit routes and pipelines. And you notice if you go to the bottom there, Egyptian gas, Arab gas pipeline, where was that going to run? That was going to run right by Jordan, just around Israel. Now, if they can move over a little bit, they can grab that and control that pipeline, especially if the war gets a little larger. The whole thing about Syria, anyway, was controlling these same pipelines. And plus, Assad wanted to start a gold-backed currency like Saddam Hussein did, along with Muammar Gaddafi. It was on the gold-backed bandwagon. So, like, as things were rolling out over these last year, you saw the writing on the wall so clearly. It was over for the Western powers in terms of monetary supply and controlling the energy trade across the planet. It was over. It's still over. This is why we're backed into a corner now, fighting. Because China did the first UN-settled LNG trade outside U.S. dollar. All right, that was the first, and then there was a tidal wave after that. It was so numerous, you really would have to use a spreadsheet after that point to keep up with transactions. And then the literal last nail in the coffin was Saudi Arabia agreed to join Brics. And, they've been, thumbing their nose at Biden and not accepting visits, etc. But you'll notice on the map there, the yellow nations, where it's upcoming dialogue partners, guests, or interested partnerships, have all signed agreements to now join, which puts the world's oil reserves over into the control of China, Russia, India, etc. Now, China's economy is more fragile than our own, or equally as fragile, if not more. So you can look at a few of the China's stalling economy, on the brink of consumer deflation. How could China act to pull its sputtering economy back from the brink? Why? 5 reasons China's economy is in trouble, failing. It won't take much to disrupt China's economy. Cutting off the oil from Iran to China would do just that. Cutting off the oil into Iran, who gives approximately 700,000 barrels per day to China. Now, I'm just talking about one single instance. Forget everything else of the UAE and others, Oman, etc., that are exporting over there. We're just going to focus on Iran, because taking away 700,000 barrels of oil out of a nation per day would even damage the United States economy. So this war is going to absolutely expand. It must include Iran. It has to. Or else all of the Western nations are going to collapse in their fiat issuance. There's no way around it. This is a war to the end, to the death of control of our planet. The monetary system is based on the energy system. And Lindsey Graham coming out, for every American hostage that Hamas does something to, we need to take down one Iranian oil refinery. Like, it is so clear that they're going after the oil exports to China to disrupt China's economy so they cannot continue with the gold-backed currency for the Brics aligned nations. This is far wider than two little countries in the Middle East fighting. That's where they want your eyes. They want your eyes over there. But you should be looking over here, because the disruption is like the Jenga game. Pull out the piece, but they need one single piece to pull out. Like, if you're looking at the Iranian oil exports, this is an older one from 2022. 2022. I couldn't find the latest one for 2023. I know that's increased from China, because with the sanctions, like Italy, France, Spain, Greece, that's all shrunken. And China and India, that's increased greatly along with Turkey. So these numbers are a little bit off, but it gives you a good indication of the lion's share of Iranian oil is going to China anyway. So if you could take down Iran, you could disrupt funding inside the Brics nation for two nations, one stone. It's like two birds, one stone. This is two Brics nations, one bomb. It's exactly what it is, because you take down China, you take out Iran, then there's no more Brics. It's BRS, BRS. You know, what happens? India, China, gone, along with Iran. So the crude exports by country, the worst deficits in trading crude oil, meaning they need to import the most because they don't produce enough in their own countries. So the ones that need the most oil voraciously every single day, who's on top? China. See, if you disrupt the flows of oil to China, you absolutely cascade them from the inside out. And that derails the de-dollarization. If that Brics doesn't move forward, they're just going to go back to using the dollar again, because it's the most stable thing. And people will get taught a lesson, even though you had this giant conglomeration of nations to fight the Death Star, it didn't work. You see where it's going. And you can see some other nations that are there also. What is this? If we go down the list, Turkey, Taiwan, Spain, South Korea, Japan. But China's the big one. Disrupt it, and you disrupt. And here, the top providers of imported crude oil to China would be Saudi Arabia, Russia, Iraq, UAE, and Oman. And Iran's in there, but they were under sanctions, so they don't really count them in the official OPEC numbers. But where are we looking at disruptions right now? Iraq's getting dragged into this because they're giving safe passage to the Taliban fighters coming from Afghanistan with all the American weapons that were abandoned over there. They're getting safe passage through Iraq. So, of course, that's going to get bombed to smithereens once again. So look how many of these you're taking out that are providing oil to China. Now, the 700,000 barrels, that's one thing. But if there's pressure on Saudi Arabia, maybe they cut, 100,000, 200,000, 500,000 barrels. And at that point, you could literally squeeze China down to a drizzle of oil. And all these nations you see in yellow have agreed to join the Brics. That's pretty much every OPEC nation. So the world has completely swung away from the US dollar. And we're going to come back. I want to talk about, how the rest of the Western world is going to react to this to keep their power starting now. Also think about the Jenga game, if you will, but then think about using the Jenga game in the Tower of Babel. You have to destroy it, but you can only pull out one main piece that will destroy the rest of it. It's a world-class Jenga game, actually it is. But China's their target. They might make you think that it's a holy war between Western powers, whatever, Middle East. It's not. That's a deflection. So you don't see really what we are literally at the point of a cornered animal, wounded, that is lashing out to do anything it can to survive. The real threat, they noticed and understood quickly they could not take down Russia in a direct weapon-to-weapon offensive, even though they're using a proxy war, and how many umpteens of trillions of dollars got funneled in there through all these different countries. I think somebody came up with a new plan that says, hey, we just need to cut off China's oil and they will implode, and then their gold-backed thing is going to stop. The gold-backed reserve currency, at least the leg. Now, when I say that is, you have to frame it correctly here, because the BRICS aligned nations are not going to use just gold to settle amongst themselves. The gold price would have to be like $150,000 or $200,000 an ounce for that to happen, and still, I don't think there would be enough out there once the world really started trading at the levels we do today. That's why we have all these derivatives and all these types of things. But to start a new currency, you're going to have something that has zero risk and 100% faith. Now, this thing is going to be like a centipede moving out. It's going to have 100 legs of trade on it. You're going to be able to trade copper for wheat. You're going to be able to trade uranium for corn. You'll be able to trade oil for molybdenum. You know, whatever's oil for steel, all outside the dollar. And these prices will be set on like 1 ton of steel will equal how many tons of wheat. And they'll either be able to direct trade or use those gold-backed tokens as an intermediary trade and swap between accounts. But then it'll be on a ledger, and it'll zero out the ledger, and that gold will be put back into the main fund again, even though they're trading commodities outside the dollar. So keep in mind, any commodity that's traded from cocoa to sugar to anything can be traded as a medium of value for another medium of value. Could be lumber, minerals, oil, anything. So keep that in mind. So the Jenga piece here, got to pull one thing out to disrupt the rest of it. And Qatar's kind of already on it here. If the bombing of Gaza does not stop, we will stop the supply of gas to the world. I think they were bringing it out to your attention because they're trying to do the same exact thing to China. Disrupt the gas supply to the world. How devastating would that be coming into winter right now? The price of your energy across to stay alive, so you don't freeze to death in your home, would probably be 10 to 20 times more expensive. Because once they did it, others would follow, and then the oil would follow. This war needs to expand greatly to include and hit Iran to make sure they get involved. To, like Lindsey Graham said, you got to hit an oil refinery. You got to hit the oil refineries if you're going to stop them. Now, I don't like to play those types of games. It's sickening what's going on right now. Sickening. But when we look at the yellow dots also, the rare earth resources, there's not that many that are really in the Western aligned nations. Now, anything that's a BRICS aligned nation has far more of these rare earth minerals. So then I'll bring you over to what the new system, you've seen it broadcast a million times. They want to move over to nuclear, pebble bed nuclear reactors that don't have the chance to, have these accidents and cooling pools, etc. So the whole thing is moving from now to nuclear power. It's going to be pebble bed. I encourage you to do a ton of research on that. It was all new for me last year learning about it. I was talking to Bob Kudla, and he's like, man, they're going to pebble bed, pebble bed, pebble bed. And I was like, all right. So this huge amount of uranium is going to be needed. Either spent uranium reprocessed or actually mined and then refined into what's going to be used. Because everybody's talking about going away from oil anyway and moving away from all these combustibles and fossil fuels and moving into uranium and renewables. So now you're looking at the uranium supply around the world as the second really most important thing, in addition to the energy, of course, the oil, natural gas. But now we get definitely a number 2 in play here. Kazakhstan, which I showed you first in that map, was one of the major players of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, along with China. Like if you start to look around here, keep in mind, recoverable reserves are not production. I could say it's in the ground. I got gold under my land, but can I get it out, or what kind of valuation can I get after they drill a core and then they can establish off the 20 acres here how much gold reserves under there and put a value? But I don't want to sell my land and have them strip mine it. I'm not like that. Production is where we're moving to. And again, this is the top 10 producers of uranium. The one in blue is a non-Brics aligned nation. Which one is that? Oh, Australia. Every other one of those in the top 10 uranium producers of our world is now Brics aligned. Again, we're being cut out of the next step to, I guess, resolving the world's petro issues. Like wherever you look, the West is not included in anything moving forward at all. None of it. We're going to get firewalled off into a third world cannibal zone is what we're going to be firewalled off into. As the rest of the world moves up into opulence and eating off gold-plated dishes. We're not included in that. This is the reason this war is starting. It's to disrupt that. And, Israel went in and bombed in Syria. An independent country went in and bombed the two airports, one in Aleppo and one in Damascus. And for those of you that follow biblical prophecy, that war, when it moves to Damascus, is it. They're in the holy war and at the end times. Syria, again, an oil exporter to China. And that was strange because the Iranian foreign minister was coming in to have meetings, and then at the same time they were in the air, they hit those runways and they actually had to turn their craft around and go back to Iran. That was part of the story too. They're just lucky they didn't take that out of the air in transit, because that would have been a world war in about really just as the plane was falling out of the ground, the war would have started across the world. Now, I like this quote here. If they persist with this war, they are going to start a draft in this nation. There's no other way around it. And it would begin the process of social and cultural destabilization and societal collapse across the United States. Well, we're already there anyway in shape and form. It would just take a little more to push it over the edge. And it's the very same thing with China. They are so close to societal collapse inside. So either one, the US and China are really like twin sisters moving down. There's so many problems that we're both experiencing, and one is just barely hanging on and just holding each other's hands barely so they don't fall off the side of the cliff. But as soon as they're no longer needed, they'll be pushed off the cliff. The destruction in our society, I would absolutely advise you to prepare. Ever since I've been doing the program here, and thank you, Mike, for letting me come on and throw my views out here uncensored. I've been saying you're going to have to get ready. There's something coming big in 2024 with the celestial alignments that replicate the tree of life or the Kabbalah in our heavens. And there was something really with that. And we're just less than a year out of that alignment. And it's really quirky how the war kicked off in the middle of the magnetic field, which I'll come to. And we're going to go into rationing also. If this war goes any further, I'm talking really, if it goes to Lebanon, you're going to see rationing in our country. If it goes to Lebanon and then Syria and they're fighting a four-front war, we're going to see rationing. So get ready for that too. Like you can talk, there's very little grandparents around anymore that lived through and remember the coupon books of World War II. So you're going to have to go back, do a little bit of your own history. But the Office Price Administration had set out these coupon books where Americans were rationed during World War II. You got 1 pound of sugar, 1 pound of butter per family per week. You were forced to grow everything, victory gardens. You had to grow your own food or you just didn't get it. Canned meat, canned fish, canned milk, rationed. You got 1 can a week. And those who had farms were able to trade milk with others outside that system. The rationing system is for supermarkets. If you know your local farmers who can grow it, you will be outside that system and you could trade that food for something else. Because when we get this, it's going to be a prolonged, protracted thing. We're talking years of rationing here. And even after World War II, it took them a couple more years to get back to where they ditched these ration cards. I think it was, and in 1946 is where we really got into supermarkets are back open, you don't need your ration books anymore. But even after they declared victory, in both theaters, we still had rationing because they still needed those supplies to get the guys to wind down the operations. So you can look at this. Coffee would be rationed. Go out and buy coffee now. If you drink coffee, tea, this kind of stuff, go get more right now. Because if we go into rationing, you're not going to get that big, 5-pound thing from Costco. Mm-mm. And can you imagine rationing and trying to have to wait for Americans? Are you kidding me? There's no way they're going to. It was bad enough with COVID trying to get people to stand outside 6 feet, but my family needs 2. No, you can only have 1. Can you imagine the amount of fights? They're going to have to either put something in a cabinet where you unlock it with your code after you pay for it and then you go get it, or they're actually going to have police and army in the stores. Like Mike and I talked about this last year. We had several conversations on the show together when I was on his podcast. I encourage you to watch those. That was not even 1 year ago when we were talking about rationing coming to America, and here we sit at the precipice of rationing in America. Putting troops in the stores to control the rage and anger of Americans who can't deal with not having enough. We talked about that, and it's here. It's right on the doorstep. So I encourage you, anything that you love to buy and eat, please go get it now because it's going to get rationed if we go any further. And like I say, I'm hoping the information I presented to you shows that we are absolutely 1,000% going to, inflate this war. It needs to. They got to get to Iran to stop the oil to China. And periphery-wise, too, the whole Middle East would be disrupted, and so would the oil from other nations going to China. China would be brought to its knees, and so would most of Asia, by the way. Japan, they rely on 99% import oil. Taiwan, 99% imported oil every day. Think about that as a nation. You rely 99% on all your fuel being brought in daily. If that's disrupted, then it'd be easy for China just to walk over here, What could China do during that time? They would start a war to try to do something to keep people's anger directed in a certain direction. So I want to bring it back here. We're in Jerusalem. This map is from 1370 AD. Now, you notice the Temple Mount up there on the left, and Herodot's castle or whatever it was in there at the bottom right. You can see the configurations around. I really think this is an electric geology formation where previous times in past, maybe Younger Dryas era where there might have been, or stories further past where there was literally planetary lightning discharge between, or planetary magnetic field disruptions where the outbound current flow, like ground to sky lightning, was so intense that it would have formed these types of strike bubbles and upwelling. So you got to think about the magnetic and the energy resonance at this spot that's been contested for thousands of years, going back prehistory. So if we look at Jerusalem today, it looks nothing like it. This is from 1660. And you notice right in the front, okay, so you see Temple Mount in the back, but today you don't see any of those large structures at all. Where are they? The foundations are still there because those were multi-100-ton blocks, similar to Baalbek, of buildings that no longer exist. They still couldn't move the foundation rocks, not even barely with our modern cranes, so those remain. Everything else is stripped out. If you take this map and try to overlay it with modern day Jerusalem, you'll find the outline. You'll see the canyons. You'll see where there's roads, but you won't see the buildings there anymore. Where did they go? It's the question. That's a massive deconstruction. And that's 1660. All right, so between then and now, like 400 years, something just does not connect in that time frame at all. So I'll try to zoom this in for you. If you do it with me, the bottom left is what you would consider the size of a regular palace in, let's say, Versailles in France or something. That's the size of a regular palace at the bottom left. Now, if you follow along on the cliffside face, you'll see some people walking down there. And let's just say they're 6 foot tall. So those cliffs are looking easily 50 to 60 foot tall. But then when you come inside, you start to see things that are very similar to what we see in London, in the middle of downtown London with the royalty. I mean, you're seeing some gigantic, massive buildings. Then, of course, you have the valley in the center and the bridges going across that. But that building right there, the 800-ton blocks for the stone foundation, explain that one to me when this is supposedly built thousands of years ago using horse carts. It doesn't. There's something here, and this is why I believe This area has been so highly and hotly contested for so long. Knights Templar, they go digging around and finding some fulgurite formations and all these underground tunnels. They come up in 1200s and are incredibly wealthy. They found a bunch of something under there and suddenly started to rule the world until 1307 when the Knight of the Long Knives came out and they butchered all of them. Thanks, Pope Innocent. That's why Friday the 13th is Friday the 13th. That's what's so scary about this whole thing, is the Knights Templar found all this treasure in the exact same spot. Came out and ruled the world in Europe and protected people going on pilgrimage for nearly 100 years. And then the church, the Pope, Roman Empire got so angry with that and was like, the remnants of that, I should say the church, not the Roman Empire itself, but the Holy Roman Empire's church that still remained in power. You know how powerful the church was? They burned you at the stake for saying one wrong thing. And then in 1307, that night where they murdered every single Knights Templar, except they left one alive, one, was Friday the 13th. And that's why Friday the 13th has such a negative, bad omen with it. And what are we sitting here today? Friday the 13th, when they're talking about giving a blood sacrifice of millions. It's just too weird and coincidental for all this to be happening right now, with all these dates lining up and all of these same places overlapping through history. Foretold occurrences, you could call that prophecy, occurring in the same days. And the March on Damascus would be the big one. And I am going to bring you back here to the Tree of Life, the Kabbalah, for those who understand more ancient mysticism. This alignment is October 24th and October 23rd of 2024. Now, it seems to me there was an encoded message in the Tree of Life, that somehow this Tree of Life understood and pointed to dates and signs in the heavens, and there shall be signs. That when we reach this square, somehow electromagnetism is funneled through, expedited, something happens electromagnetically with these planets in the one quadrant of the solar system. As the Earth passes through from the sun's magnetic field, through that, some sort of speediness, some sort of anomaly. You know, you've seen people going down chutes. What's that? Ice racing, you know, any kind of chutes, water slides. You can, like a million ways that you can see something funneled. Well, it seems like these two parallel planet sets are sending electromagnetism and behaving in such a different and unusual way for this period of time. Now, the last time, interestingly, that this formation was as square as it is, 79 AD. That was barely after the formation of Christianity, or even during the time. I mean, it took until what, 300 AD approximately for Christianity to be formed in its, what you consider form right now. But during that time, 79 AD, yeah, everybody talks about Vesuvius and things, but there was a lot more going on at the change of an age at that point also. Moved from Taurus to Bull into Pisces, and now we're moving out of Pisces just these last 2 years, 3 years, in 2020, 3 years, into the age of Aquarius. Now, it's really very quirky that you're looking at signs in the heavens, and these brokers of power always are looking at the energetics of our solar system and where the stars sit. And we move from an age, from Taurus to Bull, into Christ, the fish. And now we're out of that. In the same place that it was formed, it's almost like it's being destroyed to mark the end of the age and the beginning of a new. We know very little about 2,000 years prior. Yeah, there might be some scholars. There might be a couple broken-nosed statues around. But I'm showing you maps from the 1600s that don't match up with modern-day Jerusalem in terms of how vast the buildings should be made out of stone that should be there, but they're not. Shown clearly in the 1370s maps as well, 1340s, 1370s. Where did those buildings go? A lot of things don't match in history here, but I do want to point out one thing. On the 7th, when this thing kicked off, the Earth, this is a geocentric view here. So looking from the Earth out, we are in the max apex of the magnetic field as it's forming to its maximum anomaly in 2024. We passed through that maximum anomaly for this year, the day that this war kicked off, on the 7th. Now, you cannot tell me that's a coincidence. I really will refuse to believe that, knowing what I'm understanding about this different mysticism and the planetary alignments and the energies associated with them. We rocked through the middle of this new magnetic field at max intensity 1 year before a 2,000-year cycle completes, and they kicked the war off on the same day. Can't believe it. Can't believe it. But that's where we sit in today's world. So please get yourself ready. This is definitely going to be a protracted thing. They need to bring it through 2024. Once the war kicked off on that day, I knew they're going to rock us through the next magnetic field. We got another year to deal with this. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.